Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. Today, I have Izzy Ezagui on the show, and he is the author of a book called Disarmed, the Unconventional Lessons from the World's Only One-Armed Special Forces Sharpshooter. I'm going to say that again. The Unconventional Lessons from the World's Only One-Armed Special Forces Sharpshooter. This is his memoir from his time as a decorated squad commander in the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Force. Now, Izzy is a motivational speaker. He spends his time raising millions for hospitals and rehab centers and other charities. So, Izzy, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
My sincere pleasure.
So we were just talking before the show. Izzy's a little bit younger than the normal demographic for the show. But for me, the definition of midlife is when something happens either internally or externally that tells you that life needs to change, that you need to do something different or you need to do your life differently. And that happened to you, right, Izzy?
Yeah, sure. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So if you're okay with it, would you just give us a little bit of your story on how you got here?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that particular story took place roughly 10 years ago, to the point where it's almost it's out of body. I'm almost like I'm recalling someone else's story, and the only time I get any reminders of it is when I travel back to Israel for reserve duty, which I do once a year, and then it all comes back. So a little bit of a fairy tale, but essentially, I volunteered to serve in the IDF, and very shortly after doing so, right after we finished training, my unit was sent to battle on the Gaza border. This was during Operation Cast Lead at the end of the year 2008. And it wasn't long before my platoon was hit with mortar fire, and I lost my left arm on the spot. It was a field amputation. I was awake from the moment that it happened until I was put to sleep for surgery. So I remember that whole journey, that whole thought process. And fortunately, when I woke up in the hospital, it was with the mindset that I was going to continue my service, that I wasn't done as a soldier, and that I still had more to offer. And that's why I fought my way back into the military through all the red tape and the bureaucracy, and I continue to serve.
So it wasn't even a thought to you to quit. Like, you woke up with, I'm staying in, and I'm going to do what I started to do.
Yeah, that was definitely the initial thought, which leads me to believe that it wasn't even really a choice. It was just something that was already there. And then afterwards, through that process of returning, of making it back into combat, which took a while, it took roughly a year and a half. That's when all the potential negative thoughts crept in. It wasn't like a fairy tale where I knew the whole way through that I would succeed and that things would go well. There was definitely a lot of doubt and self-flagellation.
The visceral part of your climbing back to service was that you had to go back through basic training and prove yourself all over again.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, it was a condensed period. They didn't make me go through all 9 months of training the way that I did the first time around. So it was harder because I only had 1 month to pass all the tests, but psychologically better because I wasn't going through the entire process again. So yeah, I had to figure out how to shoot, load, and unjam assault rifles, how to do obstacle courses in full combat gear that include jumping over walls and climbing rope. I had to figure out how to pull grenade pins with my teeth. So yeah, all within a month-long period.
I just got riveted to your story when you were talking about the calluses that you had to build up on your hand in order to be able to climb the rope.
Yeah, that was actually not one of the obstacles that I thought would pose the biggest problem, because rope is mostly climbed with the power of your legs. And the hands are really just meant to kind of hold you still while your legs do the work. But I hadn't taken into consideration how hard it is to hold up your full body weight and your combat gear after you've already exerted yourself on a run while your legs do the work. So that took quite a while to figure out. And yeah, a lot of callus on the palms, a lot of blood.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny because I see the videos of you. I see that, you look like a shiny new penny now. Your story is one that, if I were to project the gold onto you, that you're a living, breathing superhero, which I'm sure people project onto you all the time, and you live through the grit of what you had to do to get back.
Yeah, mistakenly so. I do get called that. It's it's quite uncomfortable, especially knowing who I am and how human and how flawed, which is a good thing. People tend to do that. I think with most unique stories, they put you on a pedestal, no
Right.
matter how much it lacks accuracy.
Right, and forget all, like, I often tell the story of Michael Jordan and how Michael Jordan had to evolve through his career in order to keep it through the three different stages of his career, as the game changed, as his body changed, and nobody knows what he might have had to go through when he left basketball, went to baseball, and was just an average human being at baseball. And then what did he have to do internally, and what did he have to practice and learn and relearn in order to come back to the NBA? At that level, we only see the result. We don't see the sweat. We don't see the calluses and the blood on your hand when you were trying to learn to climb a rope.
Yeah, I mean that sweat is universal. I'm not much of a sports person, but I could relate to the analogy, just because regardless of the medium, we all have to adapt in order to survive, in order to keep growing.
Yeah, wow. So part of your message is we all have our own version of missing an arm. So
Yeah.
tell me about that and what you share with people from that perspective.
Yeah, I don't even know where you pulled that from. I didn't realize that was anywhere online, but
I've become an Izzy student.
Yeah, well, I definitely subscribe to the fact that we all have our version of the missing arm, our own battle scars, I guess would be a more adept analogy.
Sure.
But we've all gone through something. There's nobody who reaches this stage in life. In my case, 30. I'm assuming anybody who hits the age of 18 has already had a lot of controversy, a lot of difficulty in life, whether that's depression or cancer or watching their parents go through divorce. There's always some version of that missing arm. But I try not. I mean, I've figured out how to not look at that as a negative. It's part of what informs who you are. It shapes the person that you become.
So take me to, let's say you're talking to a group of people, and it's the tragedy happens. Well, what you think of as the tragedy happens, and now you're at the bottom of the hill, and you're staring at the hill. What goes through your mind? How do you counsel or support people to even start trudging up the hill?
Yeah, so I want to make it clear that I actually don't. I would never counsel somebody on how to overcome their own obstacle. The best I can do is share, what got me through it, and hope that they can find some kind of translation. I'm not at a point where I would even feel comfortable doing that, because our traumas are so unique. What we go through is so individual. But I would say what worked for me, um, was having the why, knowing why it was important for me to overcome my obstacle and make it back into combat, and that made the how so much easier. Once you have a reason, everything else, the hill becomes much smaller.
What was the why for you to get back into the special forces?
So there was a couple of reasons. One would be a little more difficult to get into. I definitely talk about it in Disarmed, in the memoir. Um, but I would say that the most straightforward response to how I managed to pull through, the why that got me there, was the fact that I wanted to undo the damage. I told myself that if I managed to make it back into combat, if I continue doing exactly the same thing that I was doing before the injury, afterward, then it's as if the injury never happened. If nothing changes but the injury, then the injury doesn't really matter. So it was a way for me to personally erase the damage.
Wow. So if the
And
injury doesn't matter, what matters?
that's the point, is that nothing matters. Life continues. If whatever your version of that scar is doesn't have any effect on how you look at life, on how you behave, if you keep climbing that hill, then that scar becomes obsolete. It becomes ineffective in the damage that it could have done. And that's what I managed to do, fortunately. I went back. I felt at least as whole on base as I did when I went home. The injury was a non-issue. It was never brought up. It was never discussed. By the time I was later in my military career, when I was a squad commander, and I love that. I love the fact that I was able to undo the damage. That was my why.
You even got better when you came back. When you went back, your performance was better than it was before.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories to tell is having people basically guess the difference in my timing for the obstacle course, because when I started out as a two-armed soldier, I actually failed the obstacle course the first time that I took it. And this is a difficult course. I mean, we're talking about you're wearing full combat gear, ammunition, water weight, you got a helmet on, your gun is swinging, your rifle is swinging freely by your side, and you're charging through this obstacle course. I failed it by a couple of seconds the first time that I took it as a two-armed soldier, and only passed by a few seconds the next day when I was forced to take it again. But after the injury, I beat my time by something like 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, which is, I mean, it almost doesn't even make sense to me.
That's significant. What do you attribute it to?
I had more of a reason to fight through it. It had become, that mission had become bigger than myself. I knew that the better I did, and the more that I succeeded, the more I would inspire those around me. And that became part of my why. I knew that the story was becoming bigger than myself.
Wow. So one of the things that you spoke about is most of this is in your mind. You win and lose in your mind versus what's happening outside.
Yeah, and that's something that I still struggle with. I would say that the only thing that ever really stands in my way is my own mind, and that voice inside that has a tendency to lean towards the negative in my case. Um, and even though I managed to do something unique, something truly special, that voice has never gone away. I don't think it ever will. It's something that we have to stay vigilant about throughout our life.
So I'm with you. So one of the reasons I do what I do, and I'm maniacal about this growth world and transcending the mind for myself, is because I'm have a tendency to lean towards the negative, towards a depressive side, towards a kind of a fuck it side, right?
Yeah.
And I actually don't live that way, but it's because of all the work I've done, and I know that that's waiting for me if I don't pay attention. What do you do to keep yourself on the plus side?
The honest answer is I don't always succeed. I imagine, Mark, that you're better at that than I am. Honestly, I fall into that voice on occasion, and I have to climb out of that rut. And there is damage that's done as far as productivity, dropping for short periods of time. So I'm not always successful, and I wouldn't, I guess, pretend like things are always great and that I have the answers to that. The answer is that it's a struggle. It's ups and downs.
Exactly. So, before we got on the show, you said to me, Mark, I want you to make sure that your audience knows I'm a work in progress, right? So you don't want to present yourself as a superhero who has this wisdom to impart. You just have experience to share.
Yeah, that's all I have is my experiences and the few tools that I've managed to shape out of them, but very much a work in progress, and no shame about that.
Beautiful. So talk to me about the tools that you've developed for yourself that you use.
Uh, let's see what comes to mind. One of the more helpful things that I've realized is that people tend to see you the way that you see yourself. It's really about what you project. And that's something that I learned, again, thanks to that experience in the military, not so much because of the injury, but because of the way the Israeli military functions. In my case, I was shifting to a new unit every 4 months. There was a year-long period where I shifted between 3 different units. And I basically got to decide who I was going to be and how I was going to deal with the injury differently with each group of people. And the first time, right when I ended up back in the military and I was retraining, I decided that I wanted to have a sense of humor about what happened, and make sure that everybody was okay poking fun at the injury, which in theory I'm still okay with. But they, Israelis, they have a dark sense of humor, and they maybe took it a little too far. So I decided that when I moved on to the next group of soldiers, that I would talk openly about the injury, but I wouldn't poke fun at it. And I enjoyed that 4-month period a lot better as far as how people related to me and what I was going through. And then I realized that during that last 4-month period, there's no reason not to take it a step further. And I just stopped talking about the injury altogether. It's something that never came up in conversation. It was never an issue when it came to what type of training missions I would be given with my soldiers. And it got to a point where, because I didn't acknowledge it, because it was a non-issue, I forgot about it myself, and so did everyone else. So the way that we carry ourselves, the way that we walk through life, has a great effect on how people see us walking, on how they see us move. And that's something that I do still struggle with, even though I learned that lesson. And I have to put focus on how I'm going to carry myself through the day.
Yeah, it's interesting because I believe the world only reflects back to us what we put out. I'm not even sure anybody's really out there. I think we just kind of project it, and it shines back at us. And for me, there's certain things in my life that have become a non-issue, again, because they became a non-issue with me. They're a non-issue with other people. So you got to experiment with that, making your loss of an arm superfluous to any conversation or to anything that you're doing.
Exactly. It's just an extreme example of that, but we all have the opportunity to do that because most people are focused on themselves. They don't have time to look at everyone else who's walking around them. We're unnecessarily self-conscious for a lot of the time.
Cool. So I got you in a very serious mood from the get-go here, but I know one of the things that you use as a tool for yourself is humor.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the medium. When I'm out there giving a speech, a corporate event or whatever it is, I don't want people walking away feeling sad or morose. I like poking fun at what happened under the right context, and I'll definitely, when I talk about the day that I was injured and that 45-minute period that I was lucid after the arm was amputated, people are laughing. We're taking that journey together, from the ambulance to the helicopter to the hospital, and people are laughing, and I love that. But that's something that I'll save for a presentation. If when you do have a moment to take a look at the book, you'll see that there's honesty there about some of the more painful situations that I create in my own head. I don't shy away from that.
Great. And I'd actually like you to share that now, because one of the things that I wrote down for myself is to have us talk about the fact that, I talk to military guys all the time, and when they come from military, from combat, and they come back into civilian life, they talk about being a superhero every day out in the world, and now they have to be an everyday citizen. And how do they adjust from that life to everyday life, working in a grocery store, working, sitting at a desk, and how do they deal with that? And that comes with its own problems. For you, whether you own it or not, what you did took superhuman will and strength. You overcame something very, very tough, and you did it in stunning fashion, right? So enough so that a book is attractive of your story. So so if we pin the word superhero on you, help me translate it into the everyday man, the everyday person's struggle, and be honest about what you struggle with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up, because one of the pervading thoughts that I had after I finished the military the second time around, I was genuinely worried that I peaked, that I had already done this, this amazing thing. There's nothing else that I can do in life that will approach that glory, for lack of a better word, I'd done something really special. So how do I go back to regular life afterwards as a civilian? And it's something that I struggled with for a little while. And there were a couple of I guess tools that helped me through that. One of the main things was just stumbling across the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Mm-hmm.
It just came to me at the right time. And one of the lessons that I took away from that is that it's not really about the situation or what's going on around you. You always have the choice to be good, to be heroic in your own life, to those around you, to your family, to your children, your parents. You know, just because the scale of the heroics isn't as grand doesn't mean that it's not important. You could be the grocer, packing bags, and by merit of being a good person and caring about those around you, you're living a heroic life. It doesn't always have to be exaggerated. So that was a very helpful thing for me.
I'm in 100% agreement, because on the days that it's depressive, getting out of bed is a heroic event, right? Solving a problem at work that nobody else can solve is a heroic event. Getting through procrastination for a lot of people is a heroic event. Again, I agree with you. The scale doesn't matter, but finding that fortitude inside to get up. So what is your motivation now? What keeps you going and growing and striving to work through all those very real challenges?
Yeah, I mean, before I answer that, I would just take what you said a step further and face it internally. It's not even just about the success of the action, of actually managing to wake up, of solving whatever problem it was at work. It's how you treat yourself when you do it. You know,
Tell
a
me
lot of it
more.
is a lot of it is how you behave, towards yourself, how you treat yourself. And it makes solving those problems and being heroic to others that much easier. If you can't do it for yourself, to yourself, you can't expect yourself to care about others that same way. And that's
You're saying
definitely
being kind. What you're talking about is being kind to yourself and being on your own side.
absolutely. And that, I would say, is one of my greatest struggles that I still have to stay vigilant about and don't always succeed. But working on it. And what was it that you brought up after that? I
So no,
apologize.
I want to take a yellow highlighter to that, because I had a CrossFit champion on the show, and he hurt his back, and he had to fight his way back to be able to compete again in CrossFit, and we didn't know if he was going to ever be able to do that. And one of the things he said was the number one thing was to be kind to himself, to love himself, to be on his own side. And a lot of people, in the corporate world and on, listening to the show, they think that's for Californians. They think that's for New Agers, to be kind to yourself, to love yourself, to be on your own side. But now I have an IDF Special Forces guy saying, be kind to yourself. That's the only way through these things. And I love that you brought that up, because you carried a gun, you get to say that.
It's the core of any solution to what we're discussing. Any way forward, you have to be kind to yourself. Absolutely.
I think that's my mission now, is to find the toughest MFers on the planet, to have them tell these regular people that it's okay to be kind to yourself.
Absolutely.
So cool. So now I'm curious. What's keeping you going now? What are you passionate about now to create in the world?
The arts. I that's exactly what I want to do. I want to create. I want to affect people through art. And the version that's taken for me is screenwriting and filmmaking. So I moved to LA roughly 2 years ago. I've already produced 2 short films, and I'm shooting my third one at the end of April. We're already doing auditions and scouting locations and meeting with special effects supervisors. So that's definitely the next stage for me, and what fulfills me.
Behind the camera, not in front of the camera?
That's a longer conversation, mainly because it's harder to get cast in roles when you have a physical disability, when you're missing an arm. So right now, the only thing that I've been cast in is something that I wrote specifically for me.
Lin Manuel. Oh man, now I can't remember. Miranda.
Miranda.
You know, he wrote his first Broadway play because being an ethnic guy, he couldn't get cast. So he wrote a play for himself and starred in it. So that made
any class you take today, the coach will, any acting class, the coach will tell you that you have to create your own material. Yeah.
right. And Seth Godin says the same thing. It's, you know, it's that this, it, instead of waiting to be picked by the powers that be, it's time to create your own world.
So that's exactly what I'm trying to do out here. Three short films in.
That's great. If you would send me the links to those so I could put it in the show notes so people can look you up. And is there any final thoughts that you'd like to leave the audience with from this conversation that I didn't dig up, or anything that you want to clarify?
I think it's not going to get much better than be kind to yourself. I like that you highlighted that. No, I if you want to see the juxtaposition between, I guess, a glorious action, something special that I was able to do, and the mindset that often leans towards beating myself up, then taking a look at Disarmed, at the memoir, might be inspiring. The reason that I titled it Unconventional is because the inspiration comes from seeing that what you called me before, somebody who did something that was badass, still has these same struggles, is still just as human as the next guy. And that's something that I'm proud of. I wear it as a badge of honor.
You know, I love the fact that you're so real about this. That's the premise of everything I do, my business, any content that I put out, is that we're all just human beings. Anything you see projected from somebody else is generally a lie. They're a human being also. That is the bad news, and that is also the good news. So when you see someone doing something extraordinary, it's not that they don't deal with the same things you dealt with. They figured out why that was important to them, and they shored themselves up to that one thing. Now for you, again, it's time. Now it's screenwriting. So you're going to figure out that motivation. You're going to figure out how the resources that you need and how are you going to make that dream come true. But it doesn't mean that the battles between your ears aren't going to go on.
Well said.
Man, thank you so much for being on the show. In the show notes, I'm going to put a link to the book. I'm going to put a link to a couple of videos of Izzy sharing some wisdom, even if he cringes from the fact that I'll call him wise and thoughtful. And for everybody else, thank you for listening. I love you. Have a great rest of the day.